Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm hoping everything's working properly because I've had no end of trouble with my system recently. You wouldn't even believe it. It's crazy. It's like vMix and my Rodecaster soundboard completely changed the way that everything works. So anyway, I've had to install new drivers and everything, and I think I got it working for the most part now. We'll see. Let's hit our first story, which is the cult of personality. This is actually the video that I'm most excited to talk about tonight, because this is diving into cult topics pretty heavily. I have like a PDF and everything that I wrote up to kind of follow a guideline or whatever, but there's something else I needed to do first. What was it? I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, that's right. Write down my timestamp. 2 minutes. All right. There is something going on with the cult of personality around Donald Trump. Listen to Stephen Miller describe Donald Trump and what he says after he's described.
The work that President Trump is doing, not only in Memphis, not only in Washington, D.C., but all over the country, ultimately, it will save and is saving tens of thousands of American lives. It is, I'll use that word again, what President Trump has done on border security and public safety is a national miracle that will be studied not only for generations, but for centuries to come.
A national miracle that will be studied for centuries to come. I heard this video. Just listen a little bit further.
Thank you, President Trump.
Thank you, Steve.
Everybody's clapping.
So, Cash, see if you can top that. I don't know. That's a tough one, Cash.
That is tough. You know, Mr. President.
See if you can top that. I heard this video and I thought to myself, this sounds like a hagiography. If you're not familiar with the term, it's basically a series of biographies that were written about Stalin contemporaneously, I believe. So like when he was alive, people were writing these biographies about him, and they were insane. He was the best and the smartest military leader and mathematician and musician and everything else on planet Earth. They are insane, overblown, dramatized representations of who the people are. And you can see the exact same thing in North Korea, right? Kim Jong-un, for example, born in 1984. He was a child prodigy. Propaganda claims he could drive at the age of 3. He was said to be a skilled sailor before his teens and a talented composer and musician. In North Korea, Kim Jong-il, 1941 to 2011, supernatural birth and origin story. His official biography claims he was born in a log cabin at a secret military base on Mount Paektu, Korea's most sacred mountain. His birth was prophesied by a swallow, ignited a bright new star in the sky, changed the season from winter to spring, and caused a double rainbow to appear. Soviet records indicate he was actually born in the village of Vyatsoke, Siberia, in 1941, a year earlier than the official account. Official records claim he learned to walk at 3 weeks old and was talking at 8 weeks. Kim Il-sung, the founder or one of the leaders of North Korea in its earliest days, the grandparent of Kim Jong-un, claimed he could teleport. Even the official media sources had to backtrack on that one eventually. They told people that the entire world celebrates the Kim dynasty's birthdays. Like Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, and Kim Jong-un. Everybody, the United States even celebrates the Kim dynasty's birthdays. Out of this world insane. Now listen to what Kash Patel had to say about Trump.
President, as I look around this venue, I see and I'm reminded again why we have the greatest warriors on God's green earth, the men and women serving in uniform, the men and women serving and wearing the badge, and law enforcement, our police, our sheriffs around the state of Tennessee. I'm reminded that Americans exist to protect this country day in and day out, and they've done it like we've done it here. But what we didn't have was you. We didn't have a commander-in-chief who backed the blue, who resourced the blue, who funded the military, who did whatever it takes to safeguard every single life.
Does he really like this? This is so cringy. If somebody said this shit about me, I would be crawling out of my skin. I would not be able to handle it.
Here in Memphis, Tennessee, you have put on a show for the world. You have allowed us to go out there and capture gangbangers, rapists, murderers, drug dealers at record historic levels. And for me, a first-generation Indian American kid whose parents fled a genocide in East Africa to become the 9th director of the FBI, I'm living the wildest dream you could possibly imagine, sir. But it's thanks to you. But more importantly, what I see when I look out across our great partners here in the interagency and our great legislatures and our great prosecutors and our great attorney general who has the guts.
Oop, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pause it.
In the interagency and our great legislatures and our great prosecutors and our great attorney general who has the guts to go out there and make arrests, turn them into prosecutions, and put people in prison, you are giving that dream to every single child in the state of Tennessee. You are inspiring the nation and law enforcement to come up and wear the badge and wear the colors of this country and safeguard our men and women for generations to come. This is an enduring mission, Mr. President, because you have made it enduring. It is going to go on for generations to come. They are going to try to achieve what you accomplished here, what Stephen said, in just one short year, and they're going to be doing it for decades because America was smart enough to elect you as our commander-in-chief. So while we're out there fighting for the dreams of our children, just know, Mr. President, how many millions of dreams like mine are going to be lived thanks to your brilliant leadership. Mr. President, thanks for delivering America the safest country on God's green earth.
Thank you very much.
This goes beyond just putting a puff in his petticoat, if you will. It goes beyond just talking positively about him, and it turns into something else. There are a lot of examples throughout history of cults of personality who've shown signs of this type of thing. And I want to talk about not only the propagandistic framing, the absolutely out of this world insanity that people spout off about him, but what happens to these cults of personalities, inevitably, how they always end. The answer is badly. It's a little bit more than just badly. But listen to this. This is RFK Jr. doing the same thing at CPAC, I think on March 28th.
During the campaign, I was on the airplane with them, and we were sitting across the table from each other, eating McDonald's.
That's not healthy.
Drinking Diet Coke. And we started talking about Syria, and he got a placemat, and he turned it on its back, and then he took a Sharpie, and he drew a perfect map of the Mideast, and then he put the troops.
Sorry. We're talking about Donald Trump. He's trying to tell us Donald Trump flipped a placemat over and drew a perfect map of the Middle East. Nobody believes this. This is almost as unbelievable as some of the insane claims made about the Kim family in North Korea or Stalin.
Troop strength.
I couldn't draw a map of the Middle East. I could probably rough it and get it pretty decent. You know, I know where Iran is. I know where Iraq is, Israel, Jordan, Syria. I could, get it in the ballpark roughly. He didn't say Trump got it in the ballpark even. He said he got it perfect.
A placemat, and he turned it on its back, and then he took a Sharpie, and he drew a perfect map of the Mideast. And then he put the troop strength of every country on every border on that map. And it just, challenged a lot of the assumptions that I had been told about him. He has, he has this extraordinary depth of knowledge about what's happening in each one of the agencies.
Then why doesn't he ever show us that? Why doesn't he ever actually talk on a subject coherently and actually make sense and give us real policy ideas? It's all propaganda all the way down with Donald Trump. There is never an indication from that dude that he has any idea what he's talking about, ever. Why is he showing this to some random jagoff in a plane instead of the American people if this is real? I mean, this is so absurd. It's like the claim that, who was it? Kim Jong-il, I believe, shot a 38 under par, including 11 holes in one, on North Korea's only golf course. It's that kind of insane.
Agencies, my agency and the others, and and then he has an instinct for making good choices.
Trump? An instinct for good choices?
Well, I have to say that...
And I would say this. I think my uncle, John Kennedy, understood the uses of power.
He's disgustingly besmirching his uncle's name.
Better than any president who's preceded him. I think Donald Trump understands the use of power better than probably any president that we've had.
He just said Donald Trump was a better president than his uncle, than John F. Kennedy. That is wild. It's the loyalty test. This is what cults of personality demand.
At least since Roosevelt and maybe in American history.
There were a couple other clips I wanted to hit here. Hang on. The thing about cults of personality like this is it always comes with a dictatorship. They're kind of one and the same. They're linked to each other. You always get this kind of hagiography from dictators. Hitler had one too. Hitler was special. Goring was number 2 in line to take control if something happened to Hitler. But people wouldn't have followed Goring like they followed Hitler. It just wouldn't have worked the same because he didn't have that cult of personality behind him. He had the blessing of the leader, but that's about it. Hitler was messianic. They believed that he was chosen by God to fulfill a role, much like Donald Trump. Look at, hang on, I'm just looking through my notes here. But that brings me to the next interesting point about this. When these things end, it always ends in one way. It always ends in one of two ways. Either they've created a line of succession, or it splinters into a billion factions and nobody can decide who should be the next leader. And it leads to chaos in the party, in the group, in the ideology, the belief system. And we can see this going back a long time. Look at Islam. When Muhammad died, there was a line of succession problem. Cult of personality. Everybody adored the guy. He was special, messianic, the whole nine. But there was a succession problem, and that's where you get Shia and Sunni Muslims. Some believe it was supposed to be Muhammad's son, I think. Some believe it was supposed to be like the council. I don't even remember. Look at Joseph Smith, Mormonism. When he died, who takes control? Some believed Brigham Young. Some believed Joseph Smith's son. It fractured and splintered into a billion pieces and became less powerful than it was as a direct result of that. So what happens when Trump kicks it, God willing, peacefully in a bed at an old age? I'm not trying to draw any negative attention. I'm just saying, what happens when he dies? What happens to MAGA supporters? In my opinion, they're going to splinter into a billion different groups, each of which claims authority in this matter, just like happened with Mormonism or Islam or whatever. I don't think it's going to be a line of succession thing the way that North Korea is, because North Korea is unique in that their hagiographic claims, their supernatural claims, are bloodline based, not charisma based. I mean, Donald Trump is the Messiah to a lot of evangelicals. Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-il, and Kim Il-sung were from a line of very, very, very special people in their minds, and they took precautions to make sure that that transfer of power, when they're at their weakest, was maintained safely. They passed the power down from one to the next while they were still alive and conscious and aware of what they were doing. Kim Jong-il wasn't dead when Kim Jong-un took control. Who is Trump going to nominate as his successor? Nobody. It's not going to happen. He's not going to choose a successor. He wants the attention. It's all about me, me, me. And he doesn't care what happens when he's gone. He couldn't possibly care less. He knows he's not getting into heaven. He's said as much. There is no line of succession. It's going to shatter into a billion pieces, and there's going to be complete chaos. All the while, Democrats are going to be running, hearings and filing charges against people and everything else all through the entire thing when this finally does come to a close. I think before long, whenever, Trump gives it up, MAGA is going to die in obscurity and embarrassment. I don't think anybody's going to want to admit to being MAGA eventually. The political commentators might be able to hold on to it for a little bit longer than, past his death or whatever. But I think people are going to be embarrassed by this. I guess we'll see what happens. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is that how it's going to play out? Tell me your thoughts. 18 minutes. Good enough, I suppose. There's a lot more I was going to cover, but I won't bother. There's some related stuff, too. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm trying to fix my microphone here. I've been scrolling through this Trump, effectively like this extremist cell is called patriots.win. It's the old Trump subreddit, like the Donald subreddit after it was shut down for being too extreme. They created their own website. I've been reading about their position on the Iran war. It is fascinating. We'll put it that way. It's fascinating. Let's read through a little bit of this, and I want to talk about a bot farm operation that's supposedly working against MAGA. Yeah, Russia and Iran are working together to destroy MAGA, apparently. I don't know that for sure. We'll talk more about it, but check this out. There are slurs all over this website, so, take that for what you will. U.S. President Donald Trump issued a warning on Saturday that if Iran does not fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz without threat within 48 hours, Washington will hit and obliterate the country's power plants, starting with the largest. I believe that this situation already played out. If I'm not mistaken, Trump extended it by 5 days and then ended up hitting it anyway. I don't remember. But I just want to, the point is the reactions that people are giving to this situation. Let me see if I can get some info on actually like the result of this situation too. This seems like punishment of the average Iranian civilian by destroying non-military target. It would be a literal war crime against the population. Here's hoping this is a bluff or negotiating tactic. Well, you know, I appreciate that this extremist cell is voicing concern for such a thing, but it doesn't matter if it's a bluff. You can't do that. You shouldn't, first of all, you're an idiot if you're making a bluff that you can't fulfill. You're a fool if you can't back up your words, if you can't cash the check, if you will. And second, yes, it would be a war crime. That's correct. Power plants are legitimate military targets, so I don't know what you're talking about here. It's not a war crime in the slightest. It absolutely is a war crime. Russia doing it in Ukraine is a war crime, and if we do it, then we will have committed a war crime. They aren't a military target. Targeting civilians or infrastructure that primarily serves civilians is a war crime. Civilians on life support in hospitals will die. People will be plunged into darkness with no fridges to keep food fresh. It would turn the population against us and make any dream of a popular uprising for regime change fall apart. Okay, if you're having that dream, then you're already delusional. That's not happening. That's not how anything works. There are plenty of legitimate military targets. Power plants are not among them. That's interesting, right? Let me ask a question here. Why would an attack that primarily impacts civilians be a threat to a government that has shown time and time again that the majority of their care for civilians is that they obey? Maybe the government military infrastructure would be severely impacted as well, and that's the main thrust of the threat. I don't care how the other country views their own civilians. That's speculation. Yes, the Iranian regime is violent, especially toward their own people. That's bad. But you're using that to justify a mass casualty event. Really think about what you're saying here. Assuming it's that well thought through, it seems aimed at maximizing general suffering. Absolutely, it does. All right, let's look at a little bit more here. Let me see if I can... I was really hoping there was some way to minimize these, but I guess not. If IRGC troops' families can't even enjoy power or running water, let alone Iranian military families on top of civilian populace, that may be the final straw that breaks the camel's back. They've lost air superiority. They can barely defend their power sources at this point. Backup power sources would run out of petro and supply at some point. They wouldn't last forever. They don't seem to understand the first thing about war and how all of this works. It's like they have a child's conception of this whole thing. It's absurd. Iran will regret invoking the wrath of the mighty President Trump, says this poor gullible fool. Anyway, the point is that there's a wedge being driven between MAGA right now. And as far as I can tell, this is not fully verified, but it seems like this wedge is being driven in MAGA by Iran and Russia. Bot campaigns by these countries to destroy the conservative movement. Sorry, let me chew. I was hoping to pull up this article, but it's going really slow, so maybe not quite yet. I'm trying to get past the paywall. All right, let me just close this one. Foreign forces are sowing discord on the home front. Opinion. This data was gathered by a right-leaning but legitimate data source. The study was done by the NCRI, which is the Network Contagion Research Institute. And it basically shows that a bunch of bot farms specifically targeted, I think, 10 major influencers like Nick Fuentes. Every time he posts something on the Twit or Rumble or elsewhere, almost all of the engagement that he gets in the first 30 minutes are linked to accounts that are completely untraceable. And it's the exact same accounts every single time, the exact same ones. Again, that could be innocent, but it could also indicate that there's a bot farm at work here. Now, Ben Shapiro claims that, and the ADL, they claim that Iran and Russia are trying to drive a wedge in MAGA through Nazi ideology, neo-Nazi ideology. They're claiming that Fuentes is not as popular as it seems on the surface, and neither are a few other right-wing neo-Nazi scam artists, if you will. And it's a foreign influence campaign. Let's just read through this opinion on Newsweek and see what they had to say. This is a preview of the Josh Hammer report, Politics, Law, and Culture Collide. This is a preview of the Josh Hammer report, Politics, Law, and Culture Collide, as Newsweek's senior editor-at-large Josh Hammer charts a path forward. Okay. For years, conservatives have chronicled the pathologies of progressive and cultural hegemony and the decadence of the American ruling class. Okay. Conservatives been rightly preoccupied with the left's legerdemain and subversion. I've never heard that word before. What the hell does that mean? Is that a real word? Skillful use of one's hands while performing conjuring tricks? Okay, that's a new word for me. And subversion, but have been far too slow to confront an equally grave external danger: the accelerating penetration of foreign influence operations into our own right-of-center political ecosystem. You're a little further than right-of-center, but okay. This challenge is not abstract. It now threatens the integrity, coherence, and long-term electoral viability of the American long-term electoral viability of American conservatism itself. The most recent warnings should shake us awake. A newly released study from the Network Contagion Research Institute, America Last: How Fuentes' coordinated raids and foreign fake speech networks inflate his influence, reports that what appears to be online grassroots enthusiasm for certain fringe figures on the right, such as notorious Holocaust denier Nick Fuentes, is likely significantly amplified on social media by foreign bot networks and coordinated foreign-based online manipulation. Check it out. I got the Daily Wire one. Again, you got to be skeptical about everything that's said in here, but the data seems to be legitimate from the actual organization. I find it fascinating that Republicans at least feel like they're in the crosshairs of a foreign interference pipeline now. And I have to wonder if Donald Trump intends to do anything about this. He's famous. He doesn't care. That's all he wants. You know, Trump's biographer was asked about Donald Trump. Dude's name is Michael Wolff. And he said, Trump told me when I was writing, about him and everything, that he wanted to be the most famous person in the world. And honestly, that doesn't surprise me. And I don't see, and the way I see it is, I don't think the fame has to be good. I think he'd be perfectly content with being famous for being evil. Let's just scan through the Daily Wire article on the subject. Russia and Iran are attempting to sow division among President Donald Trump's Make America Great Again movement by amplifying deceptive voices and opinions masquerading as MAGA loyalists, according to a new report. I wonder... who created the bots? That it's Russia. The report comes around high stakes talks the Trump administration has had with Russia on ending the war in Ukraine and Iran on ending its nuclear enrichment capability. Okay, that was a bizarre way to phrase that sentence. The Network Contagion Research Institute, NCRI, titled False Flags and Fake MAGA, How Foreign and Inauthentic Networks Use Fake Speech to Destabilize the Right from Within, states that Russia and Iran's coordinated playbook delegitimize every fresh headline as a false narrative, amplified Tehran's lines, and accused Donald Trump of complicity and moral corruption. Well, that's fair. Apparently, regarding who is responsible for these bot farms, whether it's Russia or Iran or somebody else, apparently there is some evidence for this. Researchers traced several custom URL shorteners used in the bot campaigns to a Moscow-based reseller that had previously hosted content for the Internet Research Agency. That's Russia's known troll farm from the 2016 election. It's a pretty technical, concrete link. That's a pretty concrete, technical link. They also found 27 Facebook pages that recycled NRA talking points during U.S. daytime hours, and then after midnight Moscow time, pivoted to conspiracy content. Those pages bought ads through Kiwi, QIWI wallets founded via St. Petersburg Crypto Exchange. St. Petersburg, Russia, of course. Kiwi is a Russian payment system. That's a financial trail. So Russia is, according to this report, is definitely interfering with MAGA and trying to weaponize them against each other, basically. I don't like any interference at all. I'm glad that they're not, well, they probably are interfering against Democrats too, but I'm glad that they're at least targeting Donald Trump if they're going to target anybody. If for no other reason, then maybe because Donald Trump might do something about it to stop interference. This is so incredibly toxic to have this in our social media environment in the United States. Hang on, I'm just looking here. They identified specific human nodes like Draven Noctis, a U.S. veteran who is a regular contributor to Russian state media outlets like Eurasia Daily, a known Kremlin propaganda outlet. So there's a documented link between at least some of the seed accounts and Russian state media, for sure. They also unmasked accounts like Red Pill Media, which claimed to be U.S.-based, but was traced to someone named Abdul Abbas in Karachi, Pakistan. Not Russia or Iran, but definitely not American. They documented a distinctive 3-emoji signature on early burst bot posts that was documented in Russia's 2016 disinformation playbook. Oh, that's interesting. Oops, I didn't mean to close that. I'm reading it from this, by the way. The 3-emoji stack. It's exclamation, dartboard, American flag. That's wild. Here's some of the softer evidence that it was Russia and Iran. The asset adjacency model that they describe, where real influencers post content and then bots amplify it, doesn't necessarily require state doesn't necessarily require state direction. NCRA labels it as real influencers acting as catalytic nodes, while bots supply the numbers to game algorithms. But the influencers themselves may not be knowingly coordinating with anyone. There's also an important counterpoint from NCRI's own work in a separate 2024 report called The Botification of the American Mind. NCRI found that Americans themselves were deploying the same coordinated, inauthentic behavior techniques, both pro-Trump and pro-Harris networks. Their own co-founder, Joel Finkelstein, said, "We spent a long time saying it's the Russians, it's the Chinese, it's us." I'm skeptical of that. That one was from NBC News, and I'm not super sure I buy into that. Kamala Harris having dedicated bot networks, come on. I'm sorry, that's a bit much for me. Anyway, the point is that there appears to be a genuine bot network operating against MAGA right now, and I find that fascinating. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. It seems to be working if that's really what's causing it, or Donald Trump is just colossally unpopular. I'm not sure which, maybe both. Okay, 18 to 37. Awesome. Alrighty, cool. Now let's hit the next story, which is, all right, I already hit hagiography. 1 second. Makala.
During the campaign.
Nope, that's the wrong video.
Mental Health Awareness Week begins today in America. It's the perfect time for parents and
to ban gender transition surgeries in.
Oh boy, we got some nutcases.
Mark. Black people out.
If you're a Christian white parent who loves.
All right, let's watch some of this Mark Robinson stuff. Okay, cool. And then let me pull up a couple more clips from Robinson. Mark Robinson. I'm sorry, I'm just looking for some clips from him real fast.
North Carolina's Republican candidate for governor.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, do you guys remember Mark Robinson? It's this dude right here who famously, he was the lieutenant governor of North Carolina, and he turned out to be a self-described, quote-unquote, black Nazi. And it turns out he looked at like a bunch of adult entertainment, I guess one could say. And it leaked. It all came out. Basically, we discovered his username and email address from a leak, from a website leak, and linked that email and username to a bunch of other websites, including, but not limited to, an adult entertainment website called Nude Africa, apparently, where he talked about being a black Nazi. We found his Amazon reviews, where he reviewed a bunch of concentration camp miniatures, like little miniature German Nazi soldiers for a diorama that you would build of a concentration camp. It was insane. Well, he came out and he admitted it. He admitted all of it. He said it was a big smear and people were just attacking him and it was political. Well, he admitted it finally. Let me just remind you of like the whole situation. Let's just step back, listen to this CBS report, and then we're going to talk about how his defenders reacted to him coming out and admitting it. Not well.
North Carolina's Republican candidate.
Sorry, let me turn this up a bit. Hold on.
For governor won't be.
There we go.
North Carolina's Republican candidate for governor won't be in attendance at Trump's rally today in Wilmington. Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson is facing calls to drop out of the race and resign from his current office after CNN uncovered disturbing posts that Robinson allegedly made online.
Not alleged anymore.
The deadline to replace Robinson on the ballot has passed, but some Republicans are concerned he could drag down other GOP candidates running in North Carolina. Nicole Killian has more.
Could I just have 1 minute of your time, sir?
CBS News was the only camera present as Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson did not answer questions outside his North Carolina home Friday. It was his first appearance since reports surfaced about racist and sexually explicit comments that he allegedly made on a pornographic website over a decade ago.
These are not my words. This is simply tabloid trash being used as a distraction from the substantive issues.
Dude, I love it how, or let me rephrase, I love going back and looking at their defenses before they admitted that they were lying the entire time, because it like really reveals something about who you are as a person when you so brazenly, flagrantly, confidently lie to people's faces like that, right?
Republican, who is now running for governor, refused to bow out of the race and is not expected to attend former President Donald Trump's rally today in the state.
This is Martin Luther King on steroids, okay? Now.
Former President Trump endorsed Robinson earlier this year, but has largely remained silent about the controversy. A CNN investigation reportedly found a series of online posts from 2008 to 2012 appearing to be from Robinson, calling himself a black Nazi and expressing support for reinstating slavery. He also referred to
literally said we should have slavery again. What is broken in your brain that you would say such a thing?
Black Nazi and expressing support for reinstating slavery. He also referred to himself as a perv and a peeper, recounting how he secretly watched women shower when he was a teenager.
I know that.
How fucked up is that? How vile and disgusting and evil is that? Again, he confirmed it all. It was all true all along.
Mark Robinson has been making incendiary statements since he's been elected. And in fact, I said he should resign a couple of years ago.
Democrats from Governor Roy Cooper to Robinson's opponent, Attorney General Josh Stein, condemned the GOP candidate.
I said he should resign a couple years ago. Isn't he the governor? Can't you just fire his ass? Can't you ice him out? Stop inviting him to meetings? Stop inviting him to lunches? Stop working with him completely? This is not like, you're not powerless in this situation.
Do you think he should drop out of this race?
I don't think he ever should have run. He is unfit, unsuitable, unqualified to be governor.
While recent polls show Robinson trailing Stein, the presidential contest between Trump and Vice President Harris remains a dead heat.
I've been with him a lot. I've gotten to know
The Harris campaign released a new ad tying Trump to Robinson. GOP strategist Doug High says the former president should keep his distance.
Cut this guy loose. You have your own priorities.
North Carolina's Republican Party is standing by Robinson. Former President Trump won the Tar Heel state in 2016 and 2020, and he's hoping to keep it in his column this time, but it's unclear if this latest controversy could jeopardize that.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that Trump won this district and Mark Robinson lost. He was very, very unpopular. Well, he had friends out there defending him. This guy that on screen here, this is a pastor. His name is, what's his name? Name is John Emanchukwu? No. Emanchukwu, yes. John Emanchukwu, I believe. He's a pastor, very famous one, who worked with Mark Robinson, defended him, said that these were all filthy, dirty, disgusting, evil lies, smeared by the press and all of that stuff. And then he admitted it. And what does he have to say now?
But to find out that Mark Robinson, on many occasions, lied to me, lied to my family, lied to you, disturbing the peace.
Are you really that stupid? You cannot tell me you're that stupid. Everybody saw all the same information as you, and you didn't see through the nonsense that this dude was handing down to you. You really didn't see that?
I'm embarrassed, upset, angry, because at the end of the day, I've had to counsel numerous people who have had issues and addictions to adult entertainment. It's not new.
Okay, you know what I find fascinating about that? I find it fascinating that they zeroed in on the adult entertainment aspect and not the I am a black Nazi aspect or I want slavery aspect. They didn't focus on those things. It was the adult entertainment that's a problem for them. That is wild. And, you know, like, the guy is a complete, disgusting, evil scumbag anyway. Outside of the adult entertainment, outside of the black Nazi and all that other stuff, he's a piece of trash. Listen to what he had to say in 2020 when he was running for lieutenant governor, I believe.
Idiotic guy was on.
Sorry, let me step back and turn it up a bit.
Idiotic guy was on stage with Candace Owens a few days ago and asked her, what America are we going back to make America great again? The one where women couldn't vote or black people were swinging from trees?
Yeah, what an idiot, huh?
I would say to him if I was standing in front of him, I absolutely want to go back to the America where women couldn't vote. Do you know why? Because in those days, we had people who fought for real social change, and they were called Republicans.
Yes, the left. Republicans were the left at the time. That's correct. They were to the left of the right-wing conservative extremist Dixiecrat KKK people. That's right. Republicans were the left. So you're saying you want to go back to a time when the left was fighting for social change, okay?
And they are the reason why women can vote today.
Because of the left, yes.
Those days that he talked about when black folks were swinging from trees. Guess who it was out there fighting?
The left. It was liberals.
To bring that to an end, to bring Jim Crow to an end. It was Republicans.
The left.
So that's the America we want to bring back. We want to bring back the America where Republicans and principles and true ideas of freedom rule. That's the America we want to bring back. That's why I'm a Republican.
You know, this is fascinating to me, honestly. These people, we know what his real positions are. We know he's a black Nazi, quote unquote. We know that he is in favor of slavery, that he would have, well, I would say he'd get along well with KKK members from the 18 to 1900s, but I don't know. Maybe he would get along with them, but they wouldn't get along with him. Anyway, he veils his language in such a way that he's avoiding saying the quiet part, right? It's all dog whistles and twisting things just the slightest bit. And I got to thinking about this the other day. Do you guys remember when Grok was supposed to be unwokeified? Do you remember how Elon Musk was trying to turn Grok into like a right-wing AI or whatever, a right-wing version of Claude or ChatGPT or whatever? And it turned into Mecha Hitler, quote unquote. It called itself Mecha Hitler. I got to thinking about that. Why did that happen? That happened because Republican ideology is incoherent. It's nonsensical. It's trash. Unless you understand the underlying principles on which it's built, then it starts to make a lot of sense. So they're in favor of states' rights, but they're not in favor of states making the decision to allow abortions. It's because they're not actually in favor of states' rights. They never were. States' rights is a thin veil for allowing slavery back in the 1800s and for allowing discrimination today. You guys ever heard of Lee Atwater? He explains it in this video. This is from 1981.
Here's how I would approach that issue as a statistician or a political scientist. Or no, as a psychologist, which I'm not.
He was a political strategist in the 80s for Reagan and stuff.
Is how abstract you handle the race thing. In other words, you start out, and now y'all aren't quoting me. It's hard. I won't hear it. You start out in 1954 by saying
You said the N-word 3 times. You start saying the N-word a bunch.
By 1968, you can't say that hurts your backfire. So you say stuff like force busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract now. You're talking about cutting taxes, and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things. And the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites. And subconsciously, maybe that is part of it. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that if it is getting that abstract and that coded, that we're doing away with the racial problem one way or the other. You follow me?
We're doing away with the racial problem one way or the other. You follow me? The point is that when they tried to train an AI to be conservative, it saw through the dog whistles because it's given a set of principles and it executes those principles objectively. The principles it was given, it was trained on, were coded dog whistles from the right. So if it's trained on data from the right, it ends up becoming a Nazi because that's ultimately what these people are under the dog whistles. They're Nazis, right? What Mark Robinson is doing here is dog whistling left and right. He's talking about the Republican Party as though there was no party shift in the 1970s. We know he holds these beliefs and he's using coded language here. We know that for a fact since his usernames and comments all over the internet were uncovered. And we know that he's a black Nazi who loves Hitler and wants slavery to come back.
I'm a Republican because of the 13th, 14th, the 15th Amendment to the Constitution and the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. I'm a Republican because whenever you look at true, honest to God, social change for the better, at the top, leading the charge, is a Republican.
He knows that is false. For a fact, he absolutely knows that's false. Social change is done by progressives, and Republicans or people on the right are for traditionalism. They are against change by definition. So anyway, the point is people are not very happy with this guy anymore now that he's admitted to being the disgusting scumbag that we all knew that he was all along. And this dumb fool, this sucker over here, fell for it and is now feigning outrage over it. It's honestly sad. Hold on. Let me just see if I can find... There was another video.
But to find...
I thought I had a shorter version of this, but I guess not.
Robinson adult entertainment scandal. All of you already know that he's come on my show many times. He's been on my show probably 4 to 5 times since his past election. I met Mark Robinson probably 2 to 3 years before he ran for office. This was many years ago. I befriended him. Our family befriended him.
Could not possibly care less. Just skipping forward here.
Challenges that we saw in the public school system. He would go to, meetings and address the issues and problems that were taking place with our children as relates to curriculum and information that was being placed at their fingertips. Mark Robinson was always upstanding. True.
Clearly not, huh? Again, like, his issue is with the adult entertainment, not the Nazi stuff. That stuff carried over. Maybe he wasn't looking at adult entertainment recently. Maybe not. I don't know. I have no fucking clue. I do know that he is a pretty open black Nazi and in favor of slavery. And you know what else I know? He had a concentration camp diorama in his basement that he really cared about. We know that because of his comments that we discovered on Amazon. His Amazon reviews were uncovered. You telling me you never went to the dude's house and saw this? The Nazi stuff isn't a deal breaker for him. He's all in on that. It's the adult entertainment that's the issue.
Truthful and honest. And I had no reason to think that when things came out on him during the past election, that Mark Robinson wouldn't tell the truth, because he always told the truth. And
no, he didn't.
My opinion, based upon what he said to me in private and publicly. But recently, Mark Robinson went on a show on another platform, and he talked about his adult entertainment addiction.
Please. Yeah, I'm going to be watching that whole thing. I think it's like an hour and a half long or something. I'm going to be watching it on my Unfiltered YouTube channel if you want to watch the whole breakdown. I watched a bit of it, and it's pretty insane, some of it. Here, this is it. Just kind of skip through a bit here.
Were telling me from the very beginning. I had all of these people that would come to me and say, you know, if you do this, if you do A, B, and C, you can monetize this and everything.
Anyway, it's pretty crazy. You should definitely listen to it, but okay. Owen Unfiltered on YouTube.
His adult entertainment addiction. Now, I'm going to refrain from saying the P word, O-R-N. You know what I'm talking about because of social media and this platform. I don't want to be flagged for doing so, but we'll say adult entertainment. But you all know.
Oh my God, dude, you didn't have to explain that.
What I mean. So Mark Robinson talked about that on a recent show. And after listening to it, I figured that first and foremost, that since he came on my platform several times, and since I didn't treat him in a manner that many people have, you know, there are many people who have distanced themselves from him because of the things that were leaked out on him. The Republican Party did that, and many donors as well. I chose not to do that because Mark told me that these things were categorically false. And
you're a sucker.
So me being a friend to a friend, I didn't abandon him. I didn't kick him to the curb. I trusted him because that's what friends do.
No. Trust is earned. You don't blindly trust anybody. You have to build a rapport with somebody. They have to earn that trust by never breaking that trust. But you really didn't see this from Mark Robinson. I don't believe you. You never went to the dude's house and saw his concentration camp model, his scale model or whatever. You never heard him say a word about how hot this woman was or whatever other thing. You never heard any of that. I don't believe you. I just don't.
But to find out that Mark Robinson, on many occasions, lied to me, lied to my family, lied to you, disturbing the peace, I'm embarrassed, to be honest.
You should be.
I'm embarrassed, upset, angry. We had a explosive conversation on this past Friday, me giving him the what for, because at the end of the day, I've had to counsel numerous people who have had issues and addictions to adult entertainment. It's not new.
Okay, look. Adult entertainment isn't an addiction in the classical sense in the same way that evangelicals want it to be. It's just not. But okay, whatever. I'm not going to bother with that. If that's a thing you want to focus on instead of the Nazi stuff, then fine. I don't even care. As long as he's out of the public eye. But it shows what kind of people they are, right? It tells us who these people are at their core. That they are fully willing to accept the Nazi stuff and the pro-slavery stuff. Just not the adult entertainment stuff. Disgusting. Anyway, tell what you think about it in the comments. I'm glad that he finally came out and admitted it. And that his life is being even more ruined. He deserves that. I just can't believe that these poor dumb fools did not see this for what it was before. Okay, there's a lot more on this that I would like to hit, but yeah, we don't have time, unfortunately. So we hit Robinson. Let's hit Joel Webbin. Hold on, I'm just pulling this up. Just a second here. Okay. How long is this one? 119? This isn't right. Wait a minute. Okay, this must be it. Just looking for the right video. 119? Yeah, this is it. Okay. Check this out. This is Joel Webbin telling us basically that he doesn't want black people in his congregation.
If you're a Christian,
he is a neo-Nazi pastor who's getting really famous right now.
If you're a Christian white parent who loves the Lord and loves your children, that you need to have the talk. The talk that we're referencing is the talk that takes your children according to their maturity at the proper time, the appropriate time, and says, there are certain parts of town that you cannot go. And there are certain people that you cannot be around.
Yep.
Right? If there's someone who is black in our church, and they've been in our church, and we know them, and they love the Lord Jesus Christ, great. We're not talking about that person, right. But we're talking about when you go into a crowd of people. If you go into a crowd of strangers, and they're white strangers, there's some danger. If they're black strangers, there is 30 times more danger.
That's not true, but okay.
Them's the facts. And it is actually a failure of your parental duty. White parents, please hear me. If you teach your children growing up, if you lie to them and say, all people and all races of people in our country are the same. They are not. You are actually depriving your child of factual, truthful information that could save their life.
So I've actually researched this pretty heavily, this specific subject, to try to figure out like exactly what he's getting wrong here. And it's kind of fascinating the way that he's twisting statistics up. There's a famous statistic cited, 1350, by the far right, by neo-Nazis, people like that. 1350. 13% of the population commit 50% of the crimes. That's not true. 13%, of course, being black people. That's completely inaccurate, twisted out of proportion entirely. But let's just go with that for a second. 13% of the population commit 50% of the crimes. Actually, I think it's 50% of the murders. It's a very specific subcategory. But when you look at actual numbers, like how likely is it that any random black person that you come across in society is going to commit a crime or be a criminal or be dangerous or whatever? It's 0.5% last I checked. 0.5% chance, which is slightly up from, I think, 0.39% chance that any random person is going to be, a violent criminal. So Joel Webbin is taking a statistic. This is how he's doing it. It's basically like this. During World War II, the Nazis were freaking out because Jewish converts to Christianity started writing music for their churches after joining a Christian church. And that number jumped by 600% in recent years. 600%. So there are now 600% more Jews writing music for Christians than there were before. Do you know what the numbers were? It started at 2 out of 18,000 and went to 11 of 18,000. This is how this dude twists statistics to his benefit. You can come up with a massively scary number in all kinds of different ways, but at the end of the day, the chances that the person that you are encountering or working with or whatever is violent is 0.5%. Very unlikely. He's extrapolating that out to assume that all black people are dangerous. Friend of Mark Robinson, though, this pastor named, what the hell's his name? John Amachuku, I think. He's a friend of quote-unquote black Nazi Mark Robinson, ex-lieutenant governor of North Carolina. He's a friend of Mark Robinson, the guy in favor of slavery. And he heard this message from Joel Webbin, and it upsets him very much.
Black people, I would leave by the droves. I would not come back. Get out of this church. If a church promotes hatred or exclusion, it has stepped out of the fellowship of Christ. If I were a black believer hearing that from the pulpit, I'd walk out. See you later. Alligator. After a while, crocodile. I got to go. I can't sit in this. I cannot sit in this because this grand wizard talking KKK master, he's messed up. And he's saying the quiet part out loud proudly and in a pompous and arrogant way. Man, I couldn't do it.
But he's apparently perfectly fine with his friend Mark Robinson saying he's in favor of slavery and that he's a black Nazi. Okay. Interesting. That's not where it ends with Joel Webbin, though. Joel Webbin is a vile, evil human being. Seriously. Listen to this one from him.
You know, for myself as a Christian and a pastor, like I always want to be able to account for things biblically. You know.
Sorry. Step back and I'll cut that jump out so that it splices together cleanly.
And a pastor, like I always want to be able to account for things biblically. You know, and one of the passages that I think of, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I'm sure you're probably familiar, but in Titus.
It's Nick Fuentes. Neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes.
Yes. The very beginning of, Paul's letter to Titus, kind of like Timothy, another young man in the faith, he opens up by saying, "This is why I left you in Crete, the Isle of Crete, to put what remains in order, appointing elders in all the churches." And then he goes in the first chapter into the qualifications for an elder in the church. And then a little later in the letter to Titus, and this is all in the New Testament, Paul, he doesn't actually say it himself, but he's quoting one of the Cretan prophets. He says, "One of your own said, all Cretans are gluttons, liars, and lazy beasts." But then he does say, "And this is true."
So he's come up with a biblical justification for discrimination and hate. Fantastic.
Based Apostle Paul, so but here's the thing. I think you have to hold intention, to be fair. So the quote from a Cretan prophet is, "Hey, I'm Cretan myself, but let's be honest, Cretans suck, and they suck in particular ways, not just generally, but they're known for these particular things. They're lazy. They're beastly. So maybe low.
I mean, we can all see what he's doing here, right? Obviously. He's implying that these qualities apply to another group of people that he doesn't like. Absolute disgusting scumbag. I told you. I said it at the beginning. Remember? I said, dude is a piece of shit.
Impulse control. You know, they're impulsive. And they're gluttons, you know, so indulgent, you know, and dishonest, you know, so these kinds of things. And the Apostle Paul validates that and says, he nailed it. This is true. Yet, holding an intention at the very same time, the opening to the letters, this is why I left you in Crete, to put what remains in order, appointing elders in all the churches. And here are the qualifications for being an elder, a pastor, a bishop in the church of Christ. Well, who is Titus going to find to meet these qualifications to appoint as elders in Cretan churches? Cretans. So I take that to mean like the Apostle Paul on the one hand is saying in general, right, which is different than universal, but in general, the Cretans, as a people collectively, are not great. And not just in a general sense, like generally, but not.
You literally just said in a general sense. But this isn't true of black people. This isn't true of any demographic of people that they're all like evil. Like you're going to come across somebody, you know, based on the color of their skin or whatever, and they're going to be bad people. Statistically, they are likely to be bad people. That's not how it works. You know why? Because race isn't real. Race was created in the 1700s. It's fictitious. It's a fake category. It was created as a means to put people into categories, into hierarchies of greater than and less than. There is no truth to any of this. You know, there is no substantive difference in IQ between races. There is no difference between races in crime statistics or any of that that cannot be explained by the fact that this group of people has been demonized and mistreated historically. And there is no generational wealth in the black community because they were literally just allowed, on the grand scheme of things, just allowed to start going around the monopoly board like everybody else. Until, you know, the 1960s, 70s, or 80s, they were not allowed to own property, certainly not in certain areas. They weren't allowed to, you know, have credit cards or any of that stuff. All this time, Joel Webbin's family has been going around the monopoly board and collecting $200 when they pass go and all of it. And he's sitting here in his chair pontificating about how, quote unquote, lazy these black people are. Absolutely evil.
In a vague sense, but in these particular areas, there are particular sins that are besetting and generally true of the Cretan people as a whole. Not just this one Cretan as an individual, but no, you could actually describe the Cretans collectively in these negative ways, and you would be generally right. And yet, one, because that's general, not universal, there will always be exceptions. And two, because of the power of the gospel, Christ actually changes hearts. I think that there will be some Cretans that will be fit to be ministers. And this is why I left you there, to put that. And I feel like we can do, and I can do that, honestly, I can do it with Europeans. And I wouldn't say historically, I wouldn't say King Alfred is what I'm about to, you know, describe white people, but today, I would say, and I could say all people. And you have to understand the disclaimer. All people, a generalization. Of course, there are exceptions. But in a general sense, I would say all white people are suicidal, toxic empathy.
No.
And cowardly.
In no way, shape, or form is that true. There isn't even a grain of truth to that. Out of curiosity, I just looked it up. any random black person that you come across, it's going to be a 0.34% chance that they will have been arrested for a violent crime in a given year. 0.34%. That means 99.66% of black people that you come across are not going to be violent. They're not going to have committed any crimes or had any run-ins with the police or whatever. 0.34%. For white Americans, it's about 0.1%. And those differences can be accounted for in the fact that police have a tendency to over-police black neighborhoods, to harass the black community regularly. I was just looking for hold on, I'm just for men overall, lifetime chances of going to prison. For comparison, lifetime chances of going to prison are about 9% for men overall, 1% for women, and about 2.5% for white Americans, and about 9.4% for Hispanic Americans. The point is that the issues that you see in these people apply to almost nobody. But you are telling your congregation to fear this group of people for no reason. That is the definition of racism. Anyway, just a disgusting scumbag. I don't know what other term to use for this dude. Tell me what you think in the comments. Okay, let's see here. Hold on. So I hit weapon. And then there's this video about the flag. That was at 1:17. Let me just write this down so I don't forget. Shoot, I already missed it. I think it was 1:02 to 1:17. Webbin. All right, awesome. Apparently this girl basically didn't want to say the Pledge of Allegiance and was harassed relentlessly by her teacher and sued and won her lawsuit, fascinatingly. I want to listen to this. Check this out.
I was sobbing and I ran out of
Hang on, I'm sorry. Let me amp it up. It's too quiet. 1 second here.
the room crying.
14-year-old Danielle Khalof tells me that an experience with her...
That's weird. It's super quiet. Okay.
I was sobbing and I ran out of the room crying.
14-year-old Danielle Khalof tells me that an experience with her teacher at East Middle School in Plymouth has made 8th grade an anxious experience for her. She says it started January 10th when the Pledge of Allegiance started playing over school speakers.
I decided I wanted to sit down because I didn't feel comfortable standing.
You know, this is a fair position. I couldn't stand for the pledge either. Didn't want to stand or whatever. Well, I think I stood during the pledge, but I didn't say the pledge. As a Jehovah's Witness growing up, I was not allowed to. I'm not Jehovah's Witness anymore. But the point is, this is your right. You don't have to do this. And it's wild that she faced any pushback for this at all. That should never, ever happen. It's an indication of where our culture is now and how brazen MAGA has become, how willing they are to act like complete scumbags. Wait till you hear what he said to her, the teacher.
Because of what's happening in Palestine. After the pledge was over, the teacher addressed the class and said that anyone that was sitting down was being very disrespectful.
Danielle
Well, go fuck yourself. I have the right to be disrespectful. See how that works?
Says that after class she went to the teacher to explain why she was sitting, but she says the teacher spoke over her continuously, ultimately telling her,
since I enjoy the freedoms of the country and that I live here, I should either stand or go back to my country.
Crying, Danielle says that she left the classroom and went to the counselor's office. Her father, Jacob, tells me that they've since learned the teacher admitted to that statement.
Their only solution was to put my daughter in a different class.
I reached out to Plymouth Canton School.
Wow, their only solution was to put her in a different class. Are you kidding me? This is like when I had the civil rights issue before, where the teacher basically told my kid, you can't, or in a sex ed class, you can't be moral without Jesus. She's not okay with people being gay. She's not okay with gay marriage. She's not okay with people being trans, and all kinds of other nonsense that is like completely irrelevant in a sex ed class. Like, why was she even saying any of that stuff? What did it have to do with literally anything? She even said, my kid's teacher did in this class, I know I get in a little bit of trouble when I say this, so I'm going to be careful, and then said all this nonsense. And you know what repercussions she faced? None. She faced no repercussions for this. Christian nationalists feel so emboldened by this. They are so willing to screw over everybody all along the way and not care, trample over everybody's rights because they think that they're immune from consequences. This kind of thing right here, when it goes to the news, this is the only consequence that these teachers are going to get. And it's something. You know, it's making national news. That's big.
They issued this response saying the district has been made aware of the incident. An investigation was conducted and appropriate action was taken.
They said the exact same thing in my situation with my kids' school. The action that they felt was appropriate was nothing.
They wrote that because this is a personal matter, they can't share the specifics regarding the employee involved, but that the district facilitated restorative practices between the teacher and students.
Based on what Danielle was letting us know is that the administration had restorative practice in the classroom with the teacher and the other students, but the only person that wasn't in the classroom was Danielle herself.
The Arab American Civil Rights League, or ACRL, held this press conference to address Danielle's story. They sent this letter to the school district demanding the school take action.
Probably a cease and desist. Yeah, same exact thing happened in my case.
And they claim the school has not. According to the ACRL, this is a direct violation of Danielle's First Amendment rights, and they have filed a formal complaint with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, fighting for justice.
That's fascinating. Yeah, you know that I grew up going to the same Kingdom Hall as the woman who fought the legal battle for the right to not say the Pledge of Allegiance. It was Barnett versus United States or something like that. I don't remember. Her name was Gaithy Barnett. Super nice woman. She died a long time ago. But the point is, Jehovah's Witnesses were on the forefront of that battle. They fought that battle a long time ago, and it's disgusting that it's coming up again, over and over and over. These scumbags will push on our rights until we don't have them anymore.
What actions need to take place for you to feel that you received that justice?
I think the teacher needs to be removed.
Watch break.
Oh my God, that was loud. Sorry about that. Anyway, yeah, absolutely. Remove the teacher. Fire them. They shouldn't be allowed to work with kids anymore if they don't know how to keep their emotions in check. Anyway, I wanted to read this article about it. I found it pretty fascinating. This is on the Friendly Atheist website. Last year, a 14-year-old student sued her Michigan public school district for berating her after she refused to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance in protest of the Israeli genocide in Gaza. I actually, like I said, I stood for the pledge, but I didn't actually say it. Jehovah's Witnesses were okay with me sitting, I guess. The district has now agreed to a settlement that involves giving the student's family a payout of $10,000. Really? $10,000? Is that it? The saga began back in January of 2025 when Danielle Khalaf, an 8th grader at East Middle School in Plymouth Canton Community Schools District, stayed seated during the pledge. She didn't explain her reasons at the time, but she had every right to stay seated. No one needs to stand for or say the pledge. End of story. Yet Danielle's teacher, Carissa Serrano, admonished and publicly humiliated her, according to the lawsuit. Carissa Serrano, interesting. This is an ACLU article. Quote, defendant Serrano disrupted the class and admonished her in the presence of her classmates. Serrano told Danielle that remaining seated was disrespectful, that Danielle was specifically disrespectful to U.S. military forces and the flag, and that she should stand. Danielle refused to stand. You know, my kid told me they don't even say the pledge in New York City because they don't it's whatever. They don't care. It's just in these rural communities that they're hyper nationalistic and try to shove this stuff down people's throats like mad. All right, this is Hemant Mehta speaking again. District officials soon sent Serrano a corrective action notice and held a staff meeting to remind teachers of the law. A good start, but that was it. And when Danielle refused to stand for the pledge days later, Serrano flipped out again. She did it again. After being told not to do this, she did it a second time. And then it happened the day after that. Serrano told Danielle she was being disrespectful and she should be ashamed of herself. What is wrong with this piece of trash? Obviously, it was the teacher, not the student, who was being disruptive and disrespectful. Danielle privately spoke to her teacher after that class and tried to explain her rationale. She's Palestinian and had sincere and serious concerns about the role of the U.S. in perpetuating the genocide. That's totally fair. Since you live in this country and enjoy its freedom, if you don't like it, you should go back to your own country. I'm going to assume she was born here. This is her own country, but okay. As a result of defendant Serrano's actions, Danielle suffered extensive emotional and social injuries. These include, among other things, inability to sleep, recurring nightmares, adoption of a more guarded demeanor, and high levels of stress. Her weakened emotional state has compromised her physical health, and she suffered what her pediatrician described as the worst case of pneumonia that the physician had ever seen in more than a year, I guess. That the physician had seen in more than a year. Danielle has sought out and relied on therapy to cope with these circumstances. In addition to the emotional injuries, Danielle has had to cope with friends who want to distance themselves from her because of these incidents. Yep, that happens. It's the chilling effect. The consequence has been isolation during a period when contact with peers is highly valued and necessary for Danielle's well-being. The impact of these incidents has negatively affected Danielle's academic performance, a student with a nearly perfect record. I believe that was a quote from the lawsuit. This is back to Hemant Mehta. While any of these things might not be grounds for a lawsuit individually, it was appalling to see it all in full. It was even worse when you realize it was the result of a teenager who didn't understand the law and took her ignorant rage out on a student. It was a result of a teacher who didn't understand the law and took her ignorant rage out on a student who did nothing wrong, and an administration that didn't take any of this seriously enough to punish the teacher or prevent the overreactions from happening in the future. The Arab American Civil Rights League, ACRL, sent a letter to the district in February demanding a few non-controversial changes. They wanted a thorough investigation of Serrano's conduct, appropriate disciplinary measures if the allegations were substantiated, a formal apology to Danielle and her family, and cultural sensitivity and anti-discriminatory training for all staffers. Arab American Civil Rights League. Shouldn't it be AACRL? ACRL? With those letter groupings, you got an uphill battle trying to make a good acronym. All right, here's another quote. This matter is not just about one student. It's about upholding the fundamental principles of respect, equality, and a safe learning environment for all. This incident stands in direct contradiction to the policies implemented by the district to protect students, and failure to act will undermine the very principles the Board of Education is meant to uphold. Later that month, Superintendent Dr. Monica L. Merritt responded with a half-hearted public statement that didn't explain in any detail what happened to Danielle and only offered vague platitudes meant to calm everyone down. Quote, "As soon as we became aware of the allegation, the teacher involved was immediately placed on leave. Then, following a review and investigation, appropriate action was taken." Please, I've heard that before. That means they did literally nothing. What appropriate action was taken? No clue. Serrano's name was no longer on the district's staff directory, but it was unclear if she was fired, remained on leave, or actually learned anything from this. That's why the ACLU of Michigan and the ACRL sued the district and Serrano herself. Interesting. They said the district either failed to follow up, supervise, monitor, and or investigate defendant Serrano's conduct, and there was a failure to implement any or appropriate policies, training, and or procedures for defendant Serrano and other teachers regarding the protection of students' First Amendment rights, or any such actions taken were completely ineffective. That is fascinating. And of course, they won. It took well over a year, but the lawsuit has now resulted in a settlement that's overwhelmingly in Danielle's favor. Quote, terms of the agreement include a commitment from the school district to provide diversity, sensitivity, and First Amendment training to leadership and staff. The district also agrees to not discipline DK for her actions, purge her files of anything that suggests her decision to remain seated was improper, and to provide counseling if needed. The terms of the settlement also say the terms of the settlement also say the Kalafs will receive a $10,000 payment by an insurance company on behalf of the teacher. For its part, the district does not have to admit any liability. Danielle said in a statement she was proud of the outcome and doesn't regret her protest. Disgusting that this happens, but it happens every single day. And most of the time, people don't do anything about it because they don't want to be social outcasts. Makes complete sense. I'm glad that somebody is paying the price and that this is getting the attention that it deserves right now. Tell me what you think in the comments. All right, let me write that down. That was 118 to 133. Awesome. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Making really good time. There was something else I wanted to cover, but I'm thinking about watching this instead. Okay, there's this guy named Peter McCullough who's like this right-wing nutcase and got really famous during COVID for telling COVIDiots, is that what you would call it? Telling COVIDiots what they wanted to hear. You know, that ivermectin would cure cancer or whatever other stupid garbage they wanted to claim. And he went on One America News Network to talk about it. It's as psychotic as you imagine. Listen to this. This woman is a disgusting scumbag, too.
Mental Health Awareness Week begins today in America. It's the perfect time for parents and patients alike to discover that transgender medicine is not the answer when it comes to handling the psychiatric drivers of gender dysphoria in teenagers. Joining me now with more, internist, cardiologist, epidemiologist, and chief scientific officer of the wellness company, Dr. Peter McCullough.
What is the wellness company? The chief technology officer, is that what she said? Of the wellness company? Is this some kind of a fake, ridiculous, like homeopathy company or something?
Thank you so much for being with us today, Doctor. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I know you've been speaking out quite a bit on this topic. It is so important, I think, to discuss further the impacts of these gender surgeries that are happening among so many teens in America. Can you tell us more about what...
First of all, these surgeries are not happening to so many teens across America, quote unquote. These surgeries almost never happen. And if I'm not mistaken, it's always been illegal to get surgeries under 18 years old anyway. So I don't even know what they're talking about.
What you found from recent studies, I know you published something on your Substack, Courageous Discourse, discussing the effects of transgender medicine. Can you tell us more about that?
Since 2016, the Obama administration and Obamacare wrote in that gender-affirming procedures and surgeries, were mandated to be covered by CMS and commercial insurances.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's healthcare. So healthcare companies should pay out for healthcare, obviously. Why is that even up for debate?
That opened up an entire floodgate of individuals moving forward for transgender operations. And what we found out is that this was largely driven by autism. That autism is exploding. It's now 1 in 36 children born today. And as autistic kids move forward,
Okay, as far as anyone could tell, autism is not exploding. Autism diagnosis is exploding. That's very different.
they approach puberty, they're likely to have gender dysphoria. And now they're being preyed upon by this transgender agenda.
The transgender agenda is preying upon autistic children. What an absolutely psychotic thing to say. Disgusting.
And so, as those vignettes pointed out, the hormones and the procedures are not reversible. They make gender dysphoria worse.
First of all, that's not true. They are reversible. Second, they do not make gender dysphoria worse. They make gender dysphoria better. They make it better. That's why they do it in the first fucking place.
Increase the burden of care. And sadly, in a paper published recently in JAMA by Jackson and colleagues, mortality from suicide, homicide, and other causes skyrockets after these transgender procedures. They're complicated, and they result in many, many setbacks for these individuals. So, as you're aware, many states now have legislation to ban gender transition surgeries and hormonal therapy before the age of 18.
Yeah, and I think that is absolutely necessary because not enough is...
Yeah, take people's freedoms away. Take people's rights away. Remove their ability to make decisions for their own bodies, for themselves in their lives. Great idea, yeah. This is one of those inconsistencies, these logical and moral inconsistencies that you find in the right. At the end of the day, these people pretend to be in favor of freedom, but they're not. At the end of the day, they want to take people's freedoms away. They just want to take specific freedoms away and amplify specific freedoms for specific people. That's how it works. And when you really dig through the dog whistles at the end of the day, you can find that there is consistency and coherence in their ideology. You will find that there is. It just doesn't resemble what they're actually telling you they believe in any way. Regarding that claim he made a minute ago, mortality from suicide, homicide, and other causes skyrockets after these surgeries. This is a gross misrepresentation of the study. The study is Jackson et al. In JAMA. The Jackson et al. Study in 2023 was a cohort study comparing mortality among trans and gender diverse people in England to cis people. It found elevated mortality from external causes like suicides, homicides, and accidental poisonings, but the study does not show that procedures caused the elevated mortality. It compared TGD, I'm not sure what that acronym means. TGD people, this is on PubMed, by the way, TGD people to cisgender people broadly. It didn't compare trans people who got surgery to trans people who didn't. The elevated suicide and homicide rates reflect the discrimination, violence, and minority stress that trans people face, not a consequence of surgery. So he's just lying. In fact, a Johns Hopkins study published in JAMA Surgery examining national medical records found a complete lack of observed mortality associated with gender-affirming surgery throughout the entire study period, 2000 to 2014, suggesting the procedures themselves are perfectly safe. So he's completely full of shit. This is a lie.
Is being done right now. The fact that kids can just go to these doctors, as we saw earlier, one meeting, and then they're just given the okay, signed off by the insurance to go forward with the procedures. I mean, it's devastating. And so many...
That's false. That's just flat out bald-faced lie that she just laid down for us. Gender-affirming care for minors involves extensive evaluation over months or years. I know people who've gone through this process, and it's not an easy one. Certainly not now. Standard protocols require sustained, well-documented gender dysphoria, mental health assessments, parental involvement, and informed consent processes. Surgery for minors were already exceedingly rare. In fact, they're almost entirely relegated to mastectomies, which should be available to minors anyway. I knew girls in high school who had to have breast reduction surgeries. You must make this available to people under 18. It's important. It is part of healthcare. Anyway, about 800 top surgeries or mastectomies per year take place. 800 in patients under 18 out of millions of adolescents. Genital surgery on minors was essentially non-existent, with the exception being some serious issue, a botched circumcision or something. Gender-affirming bottom surgery does not happen. It just doesn't under 18. And you can lie until you're blue in the face. It does not make it any more true. Also, a minute ago, they mentioned... Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
These kids have no idea. They're not informed about the lifelong repercussions to make these transitions. Why is it that doctors are able to mislead patients and not give informed consent regarding this matter?
That's nonsense.
It violates the Hippocratic Oath to do harm. And we know that gender affirming or changing hormonal therapies that work at the level of the pituitary gland and then after puberty, the androgen estrogens cause harm.
That's simply false. That's a lie. He's lying to your face. What more do you expect from One American News, though, I suppose?
In those vignettes, you can tell the voice has changed in these girls. It'll never go back. Their voices are changed into male-like voices. We now know that the voice box surgery to try to make the Adam's apple get less prominent in boys who are transitioning to girls, that causes problems. And
bro, I have never even heard of this before. What is he talking about? I'm sure that this has probably happened at some point to somebody or whatever, but do you know how rare regret is for people who transition? Extremely rare. The fact is, this is just something that happens, okay? This is part of the human experience. Trans people have existed since the dawn of time in all cultures. And this dude is coming up with reasons to hate and demonize and make things worse for everybody. Talk about violating the Hippocratic Oath.
In the end, the voice is distorted and doesn't achieve its outcomes. As that one girl pointed out, the mastectomy of normal tissues results in complications. Doctors who are doing this are violating their oath.
I'm sorry, but any surgery can create complications. That's how surgeries work. That's just the process. That's what it's like to be a human being. Welcome to the club. First time? The benefits dramatically outweigh the minimal risks to these types of procedures.
They should do no harm. Transgender medicine is bad clinical medicine, and it should be stopped right now before more people are hurt.
Absolutely. And you mentioned autism earlier.
Oh, buckle up for this one.
We're seeing a rise in that. What do you have any idea as to what is causing the rise in autism and leading so many children down this path?
When I was a child, the rate of autism was 1 in 10,000. Now the CDC says it's 1 in 36 today.
Yeah, why do you think that is? Oh my God. It's because we're better at diagnosing it. When you were a child, did autism even exist? I think that the first guy to ever be diagnosed with autism just died recently. This is in the grand scheme of things, brand new condition that we're coming to understand. We're getting better at diagnosing this. Hang on, I'm just looking here. Just a second. Okay. I was just reviewing some of this. I'm looking at the transcript here on the right.
We know that there's just a few risk factors that aren't explanatory. It's more likely to be in siblings and then parents at an older age. But this is such an explosive rise. It can't be genetic. It has to do with some type of exposure that's occurring broadly in children, and it's worldwide. And it's theorized, something in the water supply, food supply, like glyphosate used as a herbicide. One theory, no one knows for sure, is that it's hypervaccination. It's the
This is disgusting, dude. He's demonizing vaccines. He's blaming autism on vaccines. You know what this tells me? It tells me he doesn't know the first thing about what autism even is. He is a legitimate epidemiologist who legitimately did a study to basically understand, I think, how COVID was spreading. That was like his landmark study. And it was early in COVID, so nobody had done it before. It was something that someone was going to come along and do, but he did it first. So he got cited like 1 billion times. And in the scientific community, citations are currency, effectively. He got a lot of, what's the word? Not notoriety. A lot of recognition for that study that he did, because it was totally legitimate. And then he used that recognition to hurt trans people and demonize vaccines. Disgusting. This is the old Andrew Wakefield grift, by the way, if you don't know that whole story. The vaccine autism link has been debunked by dozens of large-scale studies involving millions of children. Andrew Wakefield was, I believe, a doctor. I should probably look this up to be super extra sure. 1 second. Just a second. Just trying to find an article on this so that I can talk about it. Wakefield was a British gastroenterologist and surgeon. In 1998, he published a paper in The Lancet, one of the world's most prestigious medical journals, claiming he'd found a link between the MMR vaccine and a new syndrome of autism and bowel disease based on just 12 children. It caused a global panic. Vaccination rates plummeted, especially in the UK. The publicity caused a sharp decline in vaccination uptake, leading to outbreaks of measles around the world and deaths as a result. Then it fell apart. Investigative journalist Brian Deere dug into it and discovered it was fraud from top to bottom. Not one of the 12 cases reported in the paper was free of misrepresentation or undisclosed alteration, and in no single case could the medical records be reconciled with what was published. Specifically, 3 of 9 children reported to have regressive autism were not diagnosed with autism at all. 5 children had pre-existing developmental problems despite the claim they were all normal before vaccination. In 9 cases, Wakefield changed unremarkable bowel results to non-specific colitis. He also manipulated timelines to create the appearance of symptoms appearing within 14 days of vaccination. So the whole thing was a lie from top to bottom. It was all intentional fraud. He was also being paid by lawyers in addition to all of that. Wakefield had negotiated a contract with a lawyer who hired him to provide evidence against the MMR vaccine to support a lawsuit against the manufacturer. He profited approximately $750,000 from the partnership. He failed to disclose this financial conflict of interest to The Lancet. The Lancet ended up pulling this story. Yeah, here we go. He had a competing product, too. Wakefield applied for a patent on his own single measles vaccine, from which he stood to personally profit if the combined MMR was discredited. The Lancet fully retracted the paper in 2010. 3 months later, Wakefield was struck off the UK medical register, meaning he can no longer practice medicine, in part for deliberate falsification of research. 10 of his 12 co-authors had already retracted their support for the paper's interpretation. He moved to Texas, apparently, where in 2016 he directed the anti-vax film Vaxxed, from cover-up to catastrophe, and he's still a prominent figure. Anyway, the point is, Wakefield is a complete piece of trash, and this poor dumb loser is repeating that trash.
Really accelerating, intensifying vaccine immunization schedule that is behind it. There are vignettes where children receive multiple vaccines. Let's say a 2-year-old, they have a febrile seizure, and then the parent notes at that point and forward the child is autistic. They're never the same again. So there needs to be research, all hands on deck to find out what's causing autism now.
This is all a complete lie.
Because autism is clearly driving this transgender tendency, this gender dysphoria, and they're being preyed upon. Recently,
there is documented co-occurrence between autism and gender diversity, apparently. Sorry. I'm reading this from the Transmitter. Meta-analyses found about 11% prevalence of ASD diagnoses among people with gender dysphoria, which is higher than the general population. But McCullough's leap from co-occurrence to autism causes gender dysphoria, and trans people are preying on autistic kids is complete nonsense. The researchers who actually study this overlap say the exact opposite of what he's laying out here, apparently. Lead researcher Varun Warrior stated, "It's really distressing to read sometimes where you have people who have very strong gender dysphoria and want to transition, and their therapist says, well, we need to first cure your autism before we transition, which is wrong on all levels. We want this study to demonstrate that both of these things can co-occur, and just because these things co-occur does not mean that one should be denied." Interesting.
The Autism Advocacy Network.
A 2022 systematic review found 15 published hypotheses for the autism gender dysphoria link, all lacking substantial empirical support. Nobody has established a causal mechanism, and the actual autistic trans community reports persistent, genuine gender identities. So I'm sorry, that's just what it is.
And they're being preyed upon. Recently, the autism.
Yeah, so how do we cure it? We don't. That was the point of that statement. Again, that was from the lead researcher in this study, Varun Warrior. It's really distressing to read where people say they went to their doctor and the doctor said, let's cure your autism and then we can work on the trans stuff. That's complete nonsense. That's not how anything works. And that is distressing.
This gender dysphoria, and they're being preyed upon. Recently, the Autism Advocacy Network came out with a strong statement in support of transgender medicine. Wow. So I can tell you the autistic community actually wants this transgender medicine and is causing great harm. It should be stopped. What autistic kids and people need is they need cognitive behavioral therapy, not...
Okay, well, that's a little paternalistic. I think the autistic and or trans community can speak for themselves. Thank you, though.
Not hormones or surgical procedures.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's definitely a great start instead of just jumping into the medical procedures, which we're seeing happen time and time again. Now, I want to switch gears before we head out, Doctor.
Oh, it's going to get even more psychotic, isn't it?
I know there's some very important issues happening currently with the World Health Organization. I think this is probably the most important issue that not enough people are talking about. Maybe they don't even know it's happening, but I know you do, and I'm so grateful for that. But the World Health Organization's annual assembly of all member nations is set to meet May 22nd through the 28th in Geneva, Switzerland, where they're going to vote on the adoption of the Biden administration's proposed amendments.
Okay, so this came out in June 2023, and they're about to fearmonger about some nonsense that came and went and nothing ever happened, right? Whatever she's about to fearmonger about was obvious, complete nonsense. Let's hear.
To the already existing 2005 International Health Regulations Treaty. Now, if this is passed, it would give the WHO global governance and basically allow them to declare pandemics and implement forced vaccinations in the digital ID. Congressman Andy Biggs has proposed H.R. 79, which ultimately would pull us out so that we retain sovereignty over our health care in the U.S. Can you please speak to the importance of this, Doctor?
Dude, I remember when this conspiracy theory came out. Greg Locke talked about it too. And he was convinced the WHO was going to be able to take control of the United States and force us to shut down churches that they don't like. And God, it was insane. I completely forgot about this. PolitiFact and factcheck.org covered this, though, apparently. I just pulled this up. Lawrence Ghostin, who directs the WHO Collaborating Center on National and Global Health, stated, WHO has no authority to dictate U.S. health policy whatsoever. The regulations have no control whatsoever over national health policy or programs. That is entirely a matter for the sovereign nation to decide. The WHO can make recommendations after the declaration of a global emergency, but they are just recommendations and are non-binding. The WHO itself stated, quote, nothing in the draft agreement shall be interpreted as providing WHO any authority to direct, order, alter, or prescribe national laws or policies, or mandate states to take specific actions. The treaty explicitly says nothing gives the WHO power to impose vaccination mandates, lockdowns, or diagnostic measures. This was so insane when it came out. Oh my God. Dude, COVID was a wild time to be alive, wasn't it? There were some really weird people floating around the internet saying just the strangest stuff. Like, what the hell was that dude's name? Let me find it. Hold on. I got to find this. Yes, this one. Christopher Key. That was his name. Do you guys remember Christopher Key from the COVID days?
Thank you guys for coming tonight. I so appreciate it. I came straight from Birmingham, Alabama, where I was unlawfully arrested yesterday for not wearing a face diaper to walk into a courtroom, and then I was handcuffed and walked into the courtroom.
It's all nonsense. It was all this political ploy to try to get attention. Anyway, just listen to what he said here. He's got a novel new therapy to cure COVID and any other kind of ailment.
We're going to educate you guys how to arrest the governor of Louisiana if he does not stand down on these illegal, unlawful mandates. Chlorine dioxide is that bleach that President Trump was talking about. They do not want you to know about it because it cured 500,000 people that had COVID with chlorine dioxide. We have the antidote, okay? And the antidote is even for those that have been vaccinated. And the research he's already sent me just blew me away, and they're going to tear me apart, but hey, they tear me apart all the time. And I've been practicing this for 20 years, and everybody's always said I'm cray-cray, and I am, but I'm crazy like a fox, okay?
Okay, don't know what that means. Go on.
Okay? And guys, when I tell you this, please, take it with a grain of salt, but go do the research, okay? because this is going to just be like, there's no way. But the antidote, and I'm going to kill my credibility.
I'm going to kill my credibility, he says.
Credibility I don't have anyway, so hey. The antidote that we've seen now, and we have...
Just get to it, okay? My God. Are you going to tell us what the antidote is? Or are you just going to go in circles this whole time?
Tons and tons of research is urine therapy. Okay? And what he has right now is all antidote.
Urine therapy. It's urine therapy. That's how you cure COVID. I'm not even joking. Drink your own piss. That was what he said. You drink your own piss to cure COVID. This was an absolutely wild moment to be alive, dude. I swear to God. You guys remember this? Insane garbage, right? It was like every 20 minutes, some crazy nutcase coming out of the woodwork saying the most wild thing. Drink your own piss to cure COVID. My God.
I'm going to give you some stuff. I know the chlorine dioxide was rough enough, but now drink urine.
I read something about the urine thing.
It's not sterile. That is a common misconception, but okay.
Every night my prayer, since all this happened, has been to find an antidote for this vaccine. Because guys, I know vaccines. I've studied vaccines for 23 years. There is no vaccine that I would ever take, but this vaccine is the worst bioweapon I've ever seen. And
anyway, God, COVID was a weird moment, dude. I'm telling you, it brought so many weirdos out of the woodwork, and it broke people's brains. My brother was kind of gone before, but after COVID, there's nothing left. His mind is just shot to shit now. Full-blown Trump-supporting, MAGA-loving, Marjorie Taylor Greene following nutcase. Sad to say. Anyway, these people are honestly disgusting, especially these two specifically. They have the sway in their positions to change the public's mind. And what are they using it for? Conspiracy theory. Disgusting. To make money. They're just bad people, both of them. Tell me what you think about it in the comments. Okay, I'm going to get out of here. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. It's been fun. I will talk to you guys on Wednesday on my Unfiltered channel, okay? All right, later.